Senator Patty Murray just torched Kristi Noem for freezing billions in disaster relief, calling out what she calls lawless, inhumane leadership under Trump's direction. Murray's not just asking questions here, she's demanding accountability for billions in taxpayer money and the Americans left behind.
Thank you very much, Chair Britt, and I look forward to working with you and Ranking Member Murphy in this Congress. Madam Secretary, as Senator Murphy mentioned in his opening statement, Secretary Noem, under your leadership, we have seen you ignore our appropriation laws, our Constitution, common sense, and even basic humanity. And like a lot of Americans, I really have been horrified by the lawlessness and incompetence and cruelty that we have all witnessed. And for all the talk about going after criminals, you have sidetracked DHS staff who are investigating drug dealers, terrorists, human traffickers, and rather than photo ops, we need more of your focus on providing basic diligence, because your crackdown has roped in American citizens and people who are here legally with no criminal record. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether that was right or wrong. I know it's wrong. The world knows it's wrong. And I think the first thing that history is going to say about your leadership is that you were responsible for many of these travesties. So I'm deeply concerned. You've deported a 4-year-old U.S. citizen with cancer. You've disappeared people to a notorious prison in El Salvador. And you have spent $100 million in taxpayer dollars to air TV ads thanking President Trump. That is really reckless. It's unacceptable, and in my opinion, can't continue. The American people are paying for this with our taxpayer dollars and with their most basic rights. Now, in the last 3 months, you have frozen or canceled over $100 billion in funding that was approved by Congress, bipartisan. We are talking about everything from disaster relief to grants that keep people safe. But when my staff has requested information on the status of this unacceptable holdup, the department failed to provide any acceptable justification. This illegal freeze, and it is illegal, is taking a real toll on communities who are waiting on the investments that Congress has delivered. So will you commit to immediately unpausing these funds?
Well, Senator, thank you for covering a lot of topics there. Let me touch on a few of those right away.
Well,
what the Trump administration is doing is enforcing the law for the first time. Under the Biden administration,
I'm asking you about the funds.
Illegal aliens were prioritized over American citizens. Now the scales of justice have been leveled, and
Madam
no one
Chair,
is treated better than anyone else.
I asked you a
Citizens are
question.
treated the same,
Madam
and these
Secretary,
illegal aliens
your
and criminals
answer.
are being
I heard
deported.
It previously. I'm asking you a specific
The grants
question.
that you are referencing,
Correct.
the grants that you are referencing have been paused and reevaluated to make sure that they are truly being spent in the way to which they were appropriated.
Well,
many of these grants were being diverted
Madam
into things they
Secretary,
were never intended
These funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members.
Absolutely,
in
and the Biden administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal criminals
We're
that
talking,
took the life
Madam
of
Chair,
Laken
about
Riley.
$100
I think all
billion.
of us
It is not credible
the
to
victims
me
here
that all
are the
the
people who have
recipients
died
of that.
and lost their children because
Madam
of this
Secretary,
situation.
it is not credible, Madam Chair. It is not credible that $100 billion is used to break the law. That just cannot be true. And let me change this a little bit. On the other hand, I am very concerned that DHS is now dramatically overspending funding that Congress has not provided. If you were a CEO doing that, I don't think you'd be in your job long. We need accountability and we need answers, and that includes informative responses to oversight questions sent to the department over the last 3 months. I am ranking member on this committee. I have worked with every member of this committee. We take our responsibility serious to fund your department and others. We need to have answers, we need to have accountability, and we need to make sure you're not overspending money that you were not allocated.
Well, thank you for that question. I will be very
It's not really
clear
a
in the
question,
fact.
it's a statement.
Do you want me to respond?
Well, you can.
Well, I've worked many jobs in my life, but I also have been a CEO. I've run
I'm not
businesses. I've been a
questioning your
governor.
credentials. I'm
and it
questioning
is
your spending.
We are prioritizing where our security needs are in this country, and we are hoping that this body will agree that reconciliation is necessary to address the things that have been neglected in this country for too long, that we have the technology upgrades, the manpower upgrades that are necessary. So the $170 billion request for the Department of Homeland Security
Madam
is
Chair,
incredibly
my time is
important
running
to make
out,
sure
and
we have the
I do have a
tools that
couple
we
of
need.
additional questions. The fact is that you've not been given this funding. Saying that it's going to come in reconciliation that has not passed is not an acceptable answer. I did want to ask about FEMA and disaster relief. This is really important. A lot of disaster relief has been politicized. You've endorsed eliminating FEMA outright. We have seen an upheaval at FEMA that is going to put lives in jeopardy. 1 in 5 FEMA employees have been pushed out, taking this administration's so-called buyout offer. We are losing indispensable staff just weeks away from fire and hurricane season, and over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants are still being held up. DHS is making it a lot harder to qualify for relief, something people in my home state of Washington are experiencing firsthand. Multiple requests from governors have been rejected in recent weeks, including a request from our state. And we haven't been given any response about this, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, has President Trump directed you to prioritize funding for Republican states?
Absolutely not.
Have you directed your staff to prioritize funding to Republican-led states over Democratic
Absolutely
states?
not.
Have
There
your
is,
staff
under this administration, there will not be any politicization of support, relief, FEMA assistance, or grants given based on politics.
Well,
Every single person
there
will be
is a
treated the same.
clear
It will be very
trend,
different than the Biden
Madam
administration.
Secretary, there's a clear trend of Republican-led states getting very fast responses and funding. Democrat-led states are being forced to wait. We have never treated FEMA as a partisan issue in this country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Senator Patty Murray didn't just question Kristi Noem, she dismantled her entire narrative of competence and leadership. What we just witnessed isn't your usual back and forth in a committee room. It's a U.S. Senator confronting an administration that has turned governance into a political weapon. When Murray listed the failures under Noem's Department of Homeland Security, it wasn't just about paperwork or mismanagement. It was about real people. Families waiting for disaster relief funds that were already approved by Congress. Funds that could rebuild homes, reopen schools, and save lives, frozen without reason. This isn't a budget issue, it's a moral one. Think about that for a moment. Over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants, money meant for communities devastated by floods, fires, and hurricanes, just sitting there. Not because of a lack of resources, but because someone in power decided to play politics with people's pain. That's not governance, that's hostage-taking. And when Senator Murray pressed Noem for answers, Noem hid behind the same vague talking points we've heard for years about reevaluation, security priorities, and reconciliation. But the truth is simple. None of those words explain why American communities, including red states, are waiting for the help they were promised. None of them justified deporting a 4-year-old American child with cancer or funneling taxpayer money into propaganda. This moment cuts to the heart of what's wrong with political leadership under Trump's influence, the idea that cruelty and chaos somehow equal strength, that it's acceptable to ignore bipartisan law, defund critical programs, and dismiss oversight, all while blaming the last administration. Murray's pushback wasn't just political theater. It was a reminder that congressional oversight exists for a reason. Because without it, democracy starts to look a lot like dictatorship, where funding decisions depend on who your governor voted for, not who your people are. And here's the most telling part. When Murray asked point blank if Trump directed Noem to prioritize Republican-led states for FEMA relief, Noem denied it, but couldn't explain the pattern of red states getting immediate responses while blue states are left waiting. That's not coincidence, that's calculation. This exchange is about more than frozen disaster aid. It's about whether public service still means serving the public. Murray's outrage represents every American who pays taxes, follows the law, and expects at least some basic competence in return. At the end of the day, leadership isn't about slogans or press conferences. It's about showing up when it matters, when people are suffering and scared, when the cameras aren't rolling, when lives depend on the decisions made in those rooms. And that's what Senator Murray demanded today: real leadership, real answers, and real accountability. So if you believe transparency still matters, if you believe government should protect people, not punish them, then this exchange is your reminder to stay alert, stay informed, and stay engaged. Subscribe to Left Lens for more breakdowns like this, where we pull back the curtain on power and tell you what's really going on behind these hearings. Because democracy depends on people who don't just watch, but understand.